This is your Chargers linebacker, Dan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. This is your first time tuning in the show. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, 1 week remaining in the 2024 NFL season.
There's a bare naked ladies reference there.
Oh, hell, Dan. You usually save those for when we're 1 week out from the NFL draft. Dan Wolkenstein never missed an opportunity to put a musical reference into Chargers Unleashed, let me tell you what. But 1 week remaining for the Chargers in the 2024 NFL regular season, going on the road to finish the same way that they started against the Las Vegas Raiders. And we have to preface this before, of course, we start the show, because we already know at this point in time that the Chargers have officially clinched their spot in the playoffs. But we have no idea whether or not this weekend's game against the Las Vegas Raiders is going to be quote-unquote meaningful based on what happens on Saturday between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So everything that Dan and I are going to talk about over the next hour or so could be completely relevant, or after Saturday, it could be total bullshit, completely meaningless. You have to take that with a grain of salt, but we are still going to prepare as Jim Harbaugh is preparing for everybody to be out there on the field on Sunday. We are still going to prepare in the same way that we would, going through all of the matchups for this final showdown of the season between the Chargers and the Raiders. Dan, before we get into everything, playoffs are on the horizon, final week of the season. Instead of just telling me how you're doing today, I want you to just kind of give me just an encapsulation to say what the hell this season has been like. We already know that the Chargers are going to the playoffs. 1 week remaining against a divisional opponent. Still a lot of things to fall into place between now and next week. But overall, how are you feeling?
I mean, overall, this is kind of a tale of champagne problems versus, I don't know, check bag problems for Cancun for these two teams. It feels great to see this Chargers team pop the cork, punch their ticket to the playoffs last year, and this Raiders team chilling. They are going on vacation. Family and friends have been on vacation for Christmas and all the holidays and the New Year. And this whole season, I think, has been kind of, I would say, a process for me. And I think this whole...
an appropriate word.
Yeah, I think,
definitely a process for you.
I think this has been some form of, I don't want to call it therapy, but just being tethered to reality has really helped me this year and has kept me from the extreme highs and the extreme lows. And I have tried to keep an even keel. I've tried to stay tethered both to reality, but also sometimes to hope and optimism, but not letting it too far. And I think it's helped me stay the course this year. That being said, witnessing a Chargers team under Jim Harbaugh, year one, going to the playoffs, doing everything that we collectively and most Chargers fans predicted, I don't take for granted, because while we might predict that, that doesn't mean it will happen. Given how many years we have seen this Chargers team on paper, quote unquote, finish the sentence and then finish the season, what happens? So it does not get lost on me how impressive the entire organization has been this year. And I think we'll talk about that here in a bit as we go through, regardless of if this game matters or not. So many flowers deserve to be smelled by this coaching staff, by the front office, led by Joe Ortiz, Chad Alexander, by the players. And it's just, I think, refreshing. Maybe that's the word I would use. A process, but also refreshing to just see things being done the right way, win or loss, and sticking to the process the entire way through. Now this Chargers team has a chance to outkick my prediction at 10-7 and can get to 11 Will it matter? I'm not sure. I hope it does. But Jake, what would be one word you would use to describe this season for you?
Change. Really, that's it, Dan. From the top down, something that this franchise has not experienced in the better part of 20 years. The front office head coach connection, something that really, I don't know, because even the connection between Marty and AJ Smith was very, very torn. I don't know how far you'd have to go back to say if the Chargers have ever had a connection like this. Two guys who have been so familiar with one another in Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh, even through not directly working together, but seemingly pseudo through one Harbaugh brother to another, but have collectively taken that stance of Batman and Robin in certain situations on which one they're going to be when it comes to certain transactions. And you talk about refreshing. I'm sure it's refreshing for Jim Harbaugh, because if we think back to his days in San Francisco and some of the final years that he was there, it was very well documented, the drama that came between him and the San Francisco 49ers front office prior to him leaving to go to Michigan. And then even still from there, Dan, it's just, this is what everybody thought was going to happen no matter where Jim Harbaugh ended up in terms of the pros, that he is a culture changer, he is a winner, and he's able to do it every single place that he has been. Why would the Chargers be any different? And you see this from...
Well, they're cursed. They're cursed. Well, that's why.
Touche. But the buy-in that you have seen from this team, to the positional coaches, to the head coaches, everything that has been intertwined with this hiring has been absolutely phenomenal. And again, this is only year one, Dan. It's only year one that we're getting. Possibly the worst roster that we're going to see under this GM head coaching regime. It's pretty incredible what they have been able to overcome, punch their ticket to the playoffs in the first season of Jim Harbaugh, even devoid of certain weapons on both sides of the ball. So it's change, and you really have to take note of it.
I think what we should do, Jake, to brace for the possibility of this game not meaning anything, is let's take the first part of this show and dedicate it to, regardless of game, the storylines of this week. And then the back half will be, if, when it matters, storylines for matchups, key predictions, blah, 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 blah. But Jake, before we do that, let's pay the bills. Let's talk about our friends.
I want to remind everybody that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every single week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of up to $200,000. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Head on over to the website today. That is betonline.ag to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here.
So a couple things. We've got some voicemails. Hotline has been going strong still. So some leftover voicemails from last week going into this week, as well as some Pro Bowl discussions to be had. Some of the seasons that we've seen from these players on this team.
Snubs to be discussed.
And snubs. Yes. So Derwin James, Khalil Mack, Rashawn Slater, all in the Pro Bowl. Ladd McConkey, an alternate. Deion Henley, not. Wild. I'll stop there. You saw Tony Jefferson put out a little tweet about folks aren't watching, but a bunch of alternates there, including Cameron Dicker, Justin Herbert. There's a few more. Thoughts on the 3 that made it and those who didn't?
I mean, the 3 that made it have obviously just had stellar seasons. I mean, Derwin James has returned back to his 2018 form that was the mission of Jesse Minters that he wanted to accomplish coming into this team as a defensive coordinator. He was very outspoken about that. Rashawn Slater has had a phenomenal season. And it's saying something considering the fact that this is year 4 for Rashawn, and seemingly Rashawn has been that good since being with the team, that it's hard to really just talk about how much better he is from a week-to-week basis. The snubs, Dan, Ladd McConkey, obviously. There's other snubs from different teams, like Brian Thomas Jr. not getting in. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, all things considered, especially when you see the rookie receivers of this class that have broken 1,000 yards. Brock Bowers, who we're obviously going to talk about, having a fantastic season as a rookie tight end, him getting in. I wonder who was on the voting panel when those decisions were made. Cameron Dicker. I would have thought that the 59-yard free kick situation, something that hasn't been done in 50 years, would have held a lot of weight behind it. Other than that, the efficiency of Cameron Dicker has just been absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand how you don't put someone with that type of kicking efficiency in as a starter for the Pro Bowl. Dan, what stood out to you?
A couple things. I think unsung hero Nick Neiman for special teams is an alternate, which I thought was impressive. Joey Bosa making the Pro Bowl this year, I was a little surprised. Joe Alt being an alternate, not surprised at all. Again, I'm going through alternates here. Darius Davis, Ladd McConkey, Justin Herbert, no surprise there. Bradley Bozeman as an alternate. Again, we've heard a lot of people talk about the interior. That was a shocker to me. Cameron Dicker, not at all. But I would say the biggest surprises would probably be Joey Bosa and Bradley Bozeman. Scott Matlock is just a fun story. But a lot of names there. And I think the bigger storyline for that, Jake, is coaching staff getting the best out of its players. And you hear about like squeezing every last drop out of that positional player. That's what this Chargers staff has done. Deion Henley, though, I think is the name that obviously I don't know how he's not on there. But hey, they're on to something bigger, and that's what matters. Next storyline, Jake, is injury. Designated to return, or excuse me, open the window was one Alohi Gilman. I mean, just to clarify, the Chargers had one more spot available for the regular season to designate to return for IR, which has now been taken up by Alohi Gilman. So names like Simi Fehoko, names like Asante Samuel Jr., any other player cannot return until the playoffs. But Asante Samuel Jr., 21-day window is open. Terrell Edmonds brought in for the Chargers, former Steeler.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you say Asante Samuel Jr.? 21? Did you mean Alohi Gilman?
Oh, I'm sorry. Alohi Gilman. My apologies.
I was like, I don't think we're going to hear ASJ's name for a while.
No, so safety room getting reinforcements, it looks like. Denzel Perryman, questionable, I believe. You see a lot of guys kind of questionable. Denzel Perryman, Josh Palmer, Gus Edwards. Any names stick out to you that are really important to be in this game? Again, regardless of if it matters or not.
Yeah, I mean, Alohi Gilman for this game, I don't think you could say it could be better timing considering the injuries that the Chargers have taken in the secondary, most notably Elijah Molden going down last week. The way you can utilize him with his versatility, playing at both corner and safety, that's a tough blow for the secondary. And Jesse Minter has talked about that ad nauseum as far as how fun he was to coach. And he definitely added a element of versatility that outside of Asante Samuel Jr. and Cam Hart, in terms of guys that you could play at both positions, he was really the patriarch of that and the one that was really standing out. So again, losing him was a big blow. But again, in terms of timing, you're seeing the Chargers go out and sign Terrell Edmonds, a former first rounder from Pittsburgh. You've seen them bring in other safeties like Marcus May, Eddie Jackson. Like, they've just had a rotating wheel in the secondary, more specifically at the safety position. So in terms of what it allows for Derwin James, that's really the important part, having Alohi Gilman come back, because his style of play and what the Chargers do in coverage allows Derwin to still remain in the box, which is very important in terms of how other offenses have to scheme up against the Chargers defensively. So that's huge. That was probably the biggest notable takeaway when the injury report was released earlier this week. Other ones in terms of officially being questionable, take note that when we are going through this injury report, The final injury report for Friday has not yet been released yet. So up until now, Trey Pipkins has still been limited, even though he was back at practice as the starter. New Year's Day, he was back at practice, but it was Jamari Sawyer that was in with the starters at that right guard spot. That's an interesting one, Dan. That's one that I'm going to have my eye on, regardless of the impact of this game or possibly even going into the playoffs. As we've seen, Rashawn Slater has kind of been a player that Greg Roman has liked to bring in on certain packages. But then when Trey Pipkins was out last week during the game in New England, Jamari Sawyer had a really, really nice game on top of the entire offensive line. But Jamari Sawyer had a really nice game. You've seen other instances that when it's come to injury, other players given an expanded opportunity and they've performed well, and they have gotten more opportunities the week after. You look at that from Stone Smart after Will Dissly was out. You look at Hassan Haskins, how much more involved he's been in this offense over the last 2 weeks. Does this become another opportunity for Jamari Sawyer, given how he played in New England? I don't know, but that's one that I will definitely keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think so. Regardless, if this game matters to the Chargers, I think you'll see everybody play. That's just how Jim Harbaugh does it.
100%. He is prepping everybody as if they are going to be playing on Sunday with seeding on the line.
If this game does not matter, you're still going to see some guys out there who are starters who are playing, because you still only got 53 guys on a roster, and you can't sit all of your starters. Like, it just literally cannot happen. You still got guys that have to play. Now, that being said, you'll probably see the main guys not there, but then you'll rotate in the rest. Just to make sure listeners, viewers are on the same page as us. In your eyes, 5th seed is worth fighting for if it's out there.
Yes.
Correct? So Steelers,
100%.
Bengals play Saturday, Chargers play Sunday. If Steelers lose, Bengals win, Chargers can wrap up the 5 seed, play Houston if they beat the Raiders. Again, there is risk. As much as you hunt for the 5 seed, you are leaving yourself exposed to injury. I know you do not play scared. I know you go out there to play, to win the game. But there is risk to be acknowledged. So that opportunity cost is there. Guaranteed the 6th seed. Make sure everyone's healthy. Probably pay Baltimore. Or, if you have the opportunity to, risk it for the 5 seed. You say, go for it.
If the 5 seed is available and not locked up on Saturday, then 100% you play for that seeding.
Do you think they can win that game without their starters? Most of their starters?
Possibly. Probably. Who knows?
What a year it's been, by the way. Looking at the Chargers versus Raiders, a year ago, 63-27, whatever, minus a couple weeks.
That's the beauty part about finishing this season against this particular opponent. And this will probably be something that will come back to in the future years of Jim Harbaugh with this team. It's just insane that was the spark 1 year ago against this team. And to still see all the connective tissue that the Chargers' former GM is now the GM of the Raiders, the one that the Raiders kicked the crap out of just a year ago. And somehow Tom Telesco is on the opposite sidelines now. And Jim Harbaugh is now the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers and are going to the playoffs in his first season. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. It is. Jake, got a couple of voicemails here. Again, you can call into the Chargers Unleashed hotline anytime. You can call in at 323-902-7586. As we get to the week that is week 18, which, by the way, it's last week of the season. Isn't it wild? It's going quick. Friend of the show, Bob from Boston. Remember him from last week?
Yes.
Post-game afterwards, said it in the middle of this week. Figured we had to let Bob in on this. Bob from Boston calls back.
Hey, Bob from Boston calling. I am so happy. I walked into my Dunkies with my Chargers cap on, loud and proud.
Dunkies is Dunkin' Donuts. I can help translate, folks.
Got my coffee and my Boston cream donut. Sat down next to my friend Nikki Pockets, and I says, Nikki, Harbaugh coached circles around Mayo this week. Mayo looked like a boxer fighting Mike Tyson just before Tyson's fist lands on his face.
My God.
It's off to a great start.
Nicky Pockets? Hell yes. My buddy Nicky Pockets. Oh my God, please continue.
Uh-oh. I think the Chargers have the horses to get this done, man. If they do, you got to send bouquets to the Patriots for trading draft picks with the Chargers so that the Chargers got McConkey and Still for a 2 wide receiver sets of baked beans. McConkey has 77 catches for 1,000 yards. The 2 stiff receivers on the Pats got 12 catches for 87 yards all season, less in 1 game than Ladd. The Pats got fleeced by Ortiz. We got 2 walking bowel movements. Listen, with
I just imagine Bob from Boston just walking around, chest pumped, enjoying his medium iced regular coffee with his Boston cream donut from Dunkin', and just smiling ear to ear, grinning, eating cheesy bread, just thinking, my, how the mighty have fallen.
2 walking
the city
bowel
of champions.
movements.
The city of champions has become walking bowel movements
Walking
in the NFL.
bowel movements.
Harbaugh, Bosa, Mack, Herbert, big-time Derwin James, Ladd, and J.K. Dobbins. We got enough to make a real run at the Super Bowl. Listen, guys, I'm a superstitious guy, so I'm not going to call in any more until the Chargers finish the run. I promise you, Dan and Jake, if we win this Super Bowl, I'm going to have you at my place on Cape Cod for pizza. Not that California foo-foo pizza. Here's a cauliflower crust, olive oil, and vegetable pizza.
Jake. Party at Bob's house, baby. With whoever that was.
You know what?
They call it our pizza.
Screw my original predictions and not setting the bar too high. For this reason alone right now, God damn it, I hope the Chargers go to the Super Bowl. Holy hell.
We're going to the Cape.
Oh, my God.
Pizza. Dudes, that's not a pizza. That's a salad. We're going to have a pizza palooza. Pepperoni, salami, prosciutto, some gabagool. You guys are going to love it because the Chargers are going to go all the way. So, Bob from Boston signing off until the parade, baby. Chargers unleashed!
Oh, my God. There's so much to take away from that. From the fleecing of the trade to the walking bowel movements to Nicky Pockets to the East Coast pizza, which, Dan, again, I admittedly, out here in California, I think you can find places that have New York style pizza, Chicago style pizza, but you being there specifically for a good period of your life, is it strictly just a knockoff? Like nothing will actually beat being on the East Coast and having a slice of pizza like that?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, New York, I think New York has its own tier. Chicago, New York, kind of in their own thing. But Pizzeria Regina, honestly, the original in Boston, epic. Very good. But yeah, I wouldn't say they're known for pizza. North End's amazing, but it's more like Italian food in North End. And if you want to get on the Cape, we're talking like clam chowder. We're talking like lobster rolls, which, by the way, best lobster roll I've ever had. If you ever go to the Cape, if you have any questions, if you want to know about it, let me know. But the best one I've ever had, it's won numerous awards, the Raw Bar in Mashpee. You heard it here first. Bob from Boston.
I would say
hope we
don't stop calling, honestly, but I understand your superstitious ways. I personally am very similar in that. I get it. I respect it. Whenever whatever happens in the playoffs, I hope you call regularly because, my God, you have injected this show with such laughter
And tomato
such
sauce.
good time, and tomato sauce. Sorry.
Anytime I do a Boston accent, Jake, it always just turns into Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, you go too deep with it.
I guess. Maybe. Next voicemail. I don't know if we're going to be able to top that, but next voicemail, Jake. Big Chargers fan.
Hello? I'm a big Chargers fan, man. I don't see nothing else but the Chargers, man. I believe, look. Ain't nobody believe me when I said we were going to the playoffs, bro. Ain't nobody believe me at all, man. But we're going to the fucking playoffs, man. Hey, man. And when Justin Herbert went out in, bro, just remember, you got this call from me. And I told you we did it, baby. We did it.
A lot of Chargers fans pumping the chest right now.
And reason too, because remember, even going into last week's game against the New England Patriots, we even talked about this on the live show post game, that they're statistically every matchup screamed that, Jesse Minter versus Drake May and all the things that New England was devoid of in terms of their offensive output, what they had allowed defensively, you still had scar tissue up in the back of your head of, we've seen these situations before with previous coaching regimes when you have clinching situations on the line. Just go in, take care of business, and let's not worry about it anymore. Thankfully for the Chargers, not only did they take care of business, they trounced New England. They made it definitive. Now, yes, you could say whatever you want about New England. It was the Chargers don't make their schedule. They went in and they did what they needed to do. With 1 week remaining, they at least clinched their spot in the playoffs. And it's a great thing for this Chargers team in the first season for Jim Harbaugh. It really is.
Next voicemail, Jake. Sean from D.C. calling in. Let's hear what Sean has to say.
So, boys, Sean B. here from the D.C. area. So, what a goddamn win. I just want to...
We're still on a high.
Yes.
I just got to bolt up, baby. I just got to bolt the F up. So, a few things. Only reason I would like to see a Steelers win next week is so I can see the Ravens against the Chargers in Baltimore, since I am close. I was supposed to go to that New England game, missed it due to some flights, but goddamn is it good to be a Chargers fan right now. Bolt the F up. Bang!
Bumping their chest.
He wants to see Baltimore because he lives near Baltimore and would like to go to that game.
Which I can understand that.
I get it selfishly.
I
would
get
be
that.
The same way.
Yes. And for some other people that believe that they would like to see Baltimore, I get it. Just, taking on the best of the best.
Hell, it'd be ratings central. I mean,
that's what you'd like to see. I get it. And I'm not saying that the Chargers can't do it. I'm not saying that they can't do it at all, especially just when you hear some of the comments that players like Khalil Mack said after that first matchup against the Ravens. They were pissed off after that game. They were not happy with their performance at all. It was one of the worst Greg Roman offensive outputs that they just cannot get anything going for them. I think it would be a different game second time around. I really do.
But
again,
not play Houston.
And this is my mentality on the matter, not to not go to Baltimore, but give me the path that leads me to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, you want that smoke? Okay.
Give me that path.
You're joining the dark side here. Okay.
Because if we can assume that Buffalo and Baltimore would win their respective playoff games against their seeds, and the Chargers could take care of business against Houston, that would seemingly put the lowest seed remaining at that point in time with the Kansas City Chiefs. Give me that. Give me that opportunity to end a possible three-peat. That to me means more than going to Baltimore or going to Buffalo. Give me that.
That'd be fun. That would be fun. For him, I hope they play the Ravens, but for everyone else, including the Chargers, I hope they play the Texans. Last voicemail, Jake. Donnie from Wisconsin calling in.
What's up, guys? This is Donnie from Wisconsin. I just wanted to say real quick, last pod you were talking about how Lab broke Keenan's rookie record. Keenan did it in 15 games, 14 games started. Ladd also did it in 15 games, but only 13 games started. Just a little, that's a little cool that he did it in a tiny bit less games started than Keenan did. What a stud. Later.
That is wild to think, Dan, because he missed that. Ladd McConkey missed that Kansas City game, the second one.
A lot of people did. Both of them.
It really is insane from the standpoint of how much Ladd McConkey has done in such a short period of time. And we talked about this again post-game. It's rare that you see a payoff from a rookie that you see everything on the field during training camp. And you're like, oh my God, like this looks amazing. As Dan always says, he's always open. I called him 8-12 instead of 7-11 because he's that wide open every single time that he gets the ball. But to see the payoff, Dan, for a first-year rookie wide receiver.
Immediate
payoff. And again, we're talking about, yes, you don't have the Keenan Allens, you don't have the Mike Williams anymore.
In the shadow of Keenan Allen.
Of the expectations. You still had Joshua Palmer, who was the veteran leader of this wide receiver group.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, here comes a second-round pick out of Georgia that has just ignited this offense for what he can do. And in such a short time of doing it, it's fantastic. And I know that a previous caller was talking about, or that was Bob from Boston, talking about just the fleece of the trade. When they put that graphic up, normally, historically, when it was Tom Telesco's regime and trades were made with the Patriots, because there were a couple during his tenure, it was the Chargers that got fleeced.
And ironically, Jake, they traded up for that, which I know, generally speaking, you are not a fan of.
Usually not. And again, here's the scar tissue.
But remember what happened. I
what
said,
happened
yes,
was,
they traded up, but they kept picks. They didn't get rid of a pick. The pick just went down a little bit, that 5th round one.
Some people know how to execute trades properly, and others, for the lack of a better word, don't.
Yeah. Ladd, the part that I like about Ladd is all of the things that you can say about Keenan Allen, you can say about Ladd McConkey, except deeper downfield. Ladd McConkey is always open. Middle, deep part of the field. Short routes too, sure. But Keenan Allen was like 3rd and 10 or less machine, right? Ladd McConkey's between the 10 and 20 machine, usually. And this team desperately needed that. Desperately needed an explosive playmaker outside. But they got one outside and inside. And you're seeing the nasty work that he does, snatching ankles either way, from the slot or out wide, in motion. Ladd McConkey is just like the 13-year-old devil. I can't believe this Chargers team got him in the 2nd round. Think about how many receivers were picked before him. And again, the knock on him before was size and injury history. Those are kind of the two things. Size be damned. You say that during draft time. And so far, Ladd McConkey's been as advertised and more. You will take it. Jake, so let's say this game matters. Okay. What do you need to see from aside from wins and losses and health? Set those aside. What do you need? Is there anything you need to see from this Chargers team that you haven't already seen this year going into the playoffs? Is there anything remaining that the team must accomplish or must show you that will give you anything more?
Dan,
or alternatively, the opposite. Like, can your expectations go up or down regardless of the outcome of this game?
It's not really like a high ceiling that I have for this team or a huge expectation that I have for this team in this final game of the year. Even going up against the Las Vegas Raiders in this circumstance. I think what they have done over the past 2 weeks, you'd like to see continue, because there's always that notion of peaking at the right time. Greg Roman's talked about that. Offensively, these past 2 weeks have been Greg Roman's best weeks as an offensive coordinator. You saw what he did against the Denver Broncos. Even still against the opponent, you saw what he was able to do in terms of getting players more involved. I talked about those opportunities that come for certain players that produce. Darius Davis has caught his first 2 touchdown passes in his career in the last 2 weeks.
Arguably the catch of the year, by the way, this last one.
And if you're telling me that that is the beginning of injecting Darius Davis more into this offense, which only gives you more speed at a position that you have been devoid of that. And I got to give the tip to Dan, because Dan has been pounding this table since last year for this to happen. Got to give the tip to Greg Roman in terms of giving an opportunity to 12 as more than just a kick returner. So if there's anything that I'd like to see, if this game ends up coming down to seeding, and it matters, I would like them to display glimpses of what they have done over the past 2 weeks.
Or, wait. Do you want them to show those cards yet?
It may not be a situation to where you have to open up the entire playbook, however.
Sure.
Given the opponent. You just had it up there on the screen a minute ago. You go back to week 1. Now, this is a different Raiders team than the Chargers played in week 1. But J.K. Dobbins had himself a hell of a game.
Most notably, Max Crosby's not playing either.
Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins both are not playing, and this defensive line for the Raiders has felt it ever since. They're what, Dan? 28th in rush defense in terms of how they defended? I would assume much in the same way that I felt that they were going to do against New England, that you're going to go with a very run-heavy package. And maybe this is another game for J.K. Dobbins and Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal. As a core group, I thought that the 3 of them as a trio did very, very well last week.
Real quick, I think their rushing defense actually isn't bad. But again, without Wilkins and Crosby is a different story. But I think on the year, I think they're 11th in yards allowed, 16th in yards per attempt. So they're not terrible, but they're okay. But without them, a whole different story. Their offense, though, rushing game is hot garbage.
So that's probably where I would predominantly see Greg Roman to go in this matchup. Keep it on the ground. Give it a heavy dose of the run game. Also, Dan, how about another build for this offensive line? Offensive line had its best game against New England collectively as a group in terms of pass protection, in terms of opening up holes for the running backs. They had a fantastic game last week. And this is coming off of an offensive line that has been much maligned in terms of criticism for its inconsistent play, protecting its quarterbacks, even against weaker defense competition. Go back to that Atlanta game. They had 10 sacks on the season, and they had 5 in that game against the Chargers. That was probably the weak point of it. Thankfully, the Chargers still came out of that game victorious. But that was another example of all of these factors coming together. And even Rashawn Slater had talked about it earlier this week. He felt that this offensive line is now starting to peak at the right time. You look at what Rashawn Slater did 2 weeks ago against Denver with as many sacks as Denver's defense has. They were able to clamp it down and create enough opportunity for the Chargers to make offensive plays for them to come back from an 11-point deficit and win that game. So over the last 2 weeks, the offense in general, from offensive line to Justin Herbert to the running game, has steadily improved. And Greg Roman, you got to tip your cap to him that this is the time that you want these certain things to be happening.
Here's the thing. You look at quarterback hits for this Raiders defense this year, almost 30% of it is now not playing in this game with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins both out. Max Crosby has twice the amount of quarterback hits as any other player on this team, 20 by himself. Christian Wilkins has 6. The next highest after Max Crosby is Tyree Wilson with 10. So 26 quarterback hits on the season out of 83 total for this Chargers team. The horses aren't there this week. So the Chargers should be able to take advantage of a poor interior defensive line, both in pass and run game. This is one of those games where you'd like to see a get-right game, in my opinion. And the things that matter to Greg Roman, and the things that travel in playoffs. You need pass protection, run blocking, and a run game on offense specifically. You already know you've got your juggernaut in Justin Herbert. Like, he's good. But can you get that other stuff rolling? Because if you can, and you have opposing defenses having to honor the fact that your running game is now back to Greg Roman-style running games, that's a big deal. Yeah, you like to see that Greg Roman is, adjusting and is slinging it all around with Justin Herbert, and sure. But at the same time, playoffs a different atmosphere. It's a whole different animal. And if you can impose your will in the trenches, which I think is where Jamari Sawyer, I think, has a leg up on Trey Pickens, in my opinion. I would love to see 35, 40 rushes in this game by the Chargers combined. Let them go to town. We'll see what happens with Gus Edwards. I don't know. I wouldn't rush it. Like, this is not a game to rush it. There's no need. So we'll see. Any other storylines for the Chargers offensively versus Raiders defensively? Because, we could talk about matchups, all that jazz. Like, I don't necessarily think it matters, really. Like, this Chargers team is a better team. They're better coached. They have better talent that is currently playing. There's a couple unicorns on this Raiders team, sure. But by and large, this Chargers team's better. And they got some dudes out on defense. And the defense was probably the only thing that was keeping them even remotely in games. Now those guys are out. Raiders fans are kind of wanting to lose this game. It's kind of a win to me, Jake. It's kind of a win-win scenario. Either the Raiders find a way to stumble even more in their draft selection, somehow win this game. It would be perfect is if, for whatever reason, let's say the Steelers win. The game is meaningless to the Chargers and the Raiders still win. That's euphoria. To me, win-win. Either Chargers get redemption, sweep the Raiders, or Raiders absolutely plummet their draft stock. I'm a happy camper. If the game means nothing to the Chargers, like, sign me up for that.
One way or the other, yes.
I'll be, as much as it would suck to not have the 5 seed, I would be sitting back watching all the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th string Jake Hefners of the world out there playing. And watching the Raiders trounce
Thanks for lumping me into that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. That'd be fantastic.
Tried to slip that one right past me.
But imagine if that's the case, and then it's like 16-14 Chargers.
It's gonna be a weird Sunday.
Well,
it's gonna be a weird Sunday.
It is. But I hope it matters. I hope it matters.
Same here.
Because, man, storylines galore. Other side, Jake. Chargers defense, Raiders offense. At this point, it feels like it's a this sidebar conversation. We're having fun now. Maybe this is unfair to ask, but if you were to do it again, knowing what you know now, Ladd or Brock?
I say Ladd because of the fact, as much as I talked up Brock Bowers,
you were on the season. Brock Bowers hype train.
Yes, I was. And I'm glad to see that in his rookie season that he has done as well as he has, even if it means being on a division rival.
Absolutely balling.
If you would have selected Brock Bowers, let's just say hypothetically the Chargers traded down, I don't think that Justin Herbert is upright right now.
That's true.
Yes.
True.
And maybe Brock Bowers doesn't have the type of season that he had with the Raiders. And again, I say that from the standpoint that Justin Herbert would not be upright, and he'd probably be getting hit a lot more than he was. Maybe he'd still have
thrown to you by Tyler Heineke.
Yes, and maybe he might get close to that, considering that the Chargers would probably be playing from behind a lot more, so more opportunities in a passing offense. But hindsight's always 20/20. When you look at the move that the Chargers made, they made the right decision, despite what anybody would, as far as me wanting a certain player. The one thing about the NFL draft that always I tell Dan and just people in general, that when you pigeonhole yourself into one guy, it distorts the bigger picture of things.
Sure.
Dan was heavy on Malik Neighbors going into this draft season. I was heavy into Brock Bowers. And then as it got closer, it came down to, was it going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. or was it going to be Malik Neighbors? And then, months afterwards, of course, fast forward.
Well, then it was JT Latham versus Joe Alt. You're like, oh my God.
Right. I mean, it was like shifting, but then we hear reports that it came down to two players. It was either Joe Alt or it was Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, it was just like all these reports are just all over the place.
I'm doing victory laps. I called Brian Thomas Jr.
Again,
very early.
Another stellar rookie season. This has been a great rookie season for pass catchers. It's been great. But Joe Alt, despite the fact that didn't play right tackle in college, has made a seamless transition to the right. And now you have your bookends in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. And nobody could be more happier about that than Justin Herbert right now.
Did you see Joe Alt in the mini movie after the win? He's like, yes, football. That's all he said. I was like, that is a joke.
That's all of us. That's all of us right now.
But that's like that football playing Jesse, bring your lunch pail type, right? Like that's what this whole team is about right now. Mm-hmm. Look at Khalil Mack, Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater. Like these guys, they can care less. They don't want to talk. Literally, none of them want to talk. They just want to go out there and play. And then you see Ben Herbert talking about 300-pound one-arm pushes with Khalil Mack and Justin Herbert doing 250. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel tiny.
That's what a Ben Herbert strength and conditioning coach does for you.
Good Lord. Jake, looking at the other side, is there anything that stands out to you?
It's a different Raiders team, isn't it? It's not Gardner Minshew at quarterback. You don't have a certain wide receiver that was there against you in Devontae Adams week 1 anymore. It's a very different offense. Running, they're 32nd.
Dead last in rushing.
And you started off the season with Alexander Madison as your lead back, and now it's Amir Abdullah, who's been limited all week during practice. Dan, even still, you go back a week, and the Raiders beating the Saints by double-digit points, this offensive line still gave up 4 sacks last week. And that's as bad as the Saints are in terms of their quarterback situation, the turnovers that they had. Dan, I do go back to week 1 in this circumstance, though. This offensive line for the Raiders gave up 15 pressures in week 1. Now, they've had some reshuffling along their offensive line because JPJ was not playing that first week. Mm-hmm. But still, this is Cody Whitehair gave up 5 pressures. Colton Miller gave up 4 pressures. Their center, Andre James, gave up 3. Dylan Parham gave up 2. They've changed their right tackle now. It was Thaler Mumford who gave up 1 pressure in that first game. And now DJ Glaze, at right tackle. So they've had some reshuffling of their own in the offensive line. And like the Chargers, it's still kind of a work in progress. So in reality, you look at the weapons. I mean, everything's going to go through Brock Bowers. There's no question about it. Everything offensively that they can do is going to go through Brock Bowers. Defensively, if this game means something, we know Khalil Mack always likes to get up for a Raider game. That is for sure.
It's Brock Bowers and Kobe Myers. Those are the two.
Yes. And if you look at the difference between a week 1 Jesse Minter to a week 18 Jesse Minter, which some of the things that Jesse Minter has done over the last 2 weeks defensively, we talked about all the things offensively you like to see build on. Jesse Minter's been bringing the pressure a lot more over these last 2 weeks. I think he's got a good grip in terms of the interior defensive line rotation, whether it's between Puna, Tito, Tahir Tart in that middle to lock up the run a little bit more. I think there's been a good, healthy 4-man rotation. Are we going to see more of those packages where it's Bosa, Mack, Dupree, Tooley out on the field. Who knows? But I think there's a big difference between a week 1 Jesse Minter and a week 18 Jesse Minter. So if this game 100% matters come Sunday, I think that Jesse Minter is going to be absolutely ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, first and foremost is Brock Bowers, and then you got Jacoby Myers, you got Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker I liked coming out of college as well. Amir Abdullah, if he does play out of the backfield, sure, a little bit. But it's fascinating to me. I know Michael Mayer hasn't been there all season. He's been out for some personal reasons, I believe. But he has such little production. It's kind of surprising. He has just 17 receptions for $135 all season in 10 games. That's like 2-point-something receptions a game. That's not who I thought they were going to be. Those aren't the stats I thought that was coming when he was drafted. Aiden O'Connell, I mean, again, similar to last week, the week before, if it's Bo Nix versus Jesse Minter, if it's Drake May versus Jesse Minter, if it's Aiden O'Connell versus Jesse Minter, I'm taking Jesse Minter, especially in the second game.
The underlying story of all this is that you got 2 guys from Georgia on opposing sidelines that have set records for their respective franchises and in the league. So it's a pseudo Georgia game to say, hey, remember these weapons that Georgia had once upon a time in college? They were pretty damn good.
So, Jake, closing it out. Bold predictions, final score. We know we've talked about the coaching advantage the Chargers have, and thank goodness AP stayed with Las Vegas and all the drama that's gone on since then, and now they're looking for lottery picks. Let's do 2 scenarios here, okay? Bold prediction and final score if the game matters, and then if it doesn't. So let's say in the scenario 1, Cincinnati wins, Chargers are playing their horses. Bold prediction, final score.
Bold prediction, Cincinnati wins, Chargers are playing their horses. You can't go into a Raiders matchup when you still have Khalil Mack on this team and say that he's not going to have himself a game. Yeah. It's just impossible to do that. Khalil Mack plays the Raiders as if they owe him money. It's that's how short it is. And again, I just mentioned Colton Miller, who Khalil Mack's probably going to be seeing a lot of, gave it 4 pressures and 2 sacks last time. I expect a similar stat line for Khalil Mack in this game. So screw it. I'll say he's going to go 1 over, and somehow he's going to uptick that sack number to 3. Let's pull the hat trick for Khalil Mack. If this game matters and the Chargers are playing their horses,
careful. It's a divisional matchup.
Yes.
Games are always funky.
It's always tougher, yes. Do I expect a 40-7 blowout the way it was last week against New England? No, I do not. I'll say it's 24-14 Chargers.
If it matters.
If it matters.
Okay. If it matters and you're playing your horses, I'm looking at this purely from a monetary perspective. I want JK to go off.
There you
I
go.
want Christian Fulton to go off. And the other one that I want to go off is Bud Dupree. I would like to see the trifecta. J.K. Dobbins get more than 58 rushing yards, so we can get another $150,000 in his pocket. Christian Fulton gets an interception, another $125,000 in his pocket. And Bud Dupree, if he gets another sack, he gets $250,000 cold hard cash.
So you're going on the incentive bold predictions here.
I'm going all 3 are hitting. All 3. And I would love to see each celebration. Because you know this Chargers team, right? It's all about the team. And you know this team knows these numbers that they're missing. You don't think that they're going to go after or find a way to get Bud Dupree a sack? See if they can get Hunting with Christian Fulton? The JK just eat for a half?
So are you parlaying this into your prop bet?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? You're going all 3? All right.
I'm going all 3. That's my bold prediction. All 3 are hitting. All 3 are making a collective like $500,000 this game. Let's go. Final score, if it matters. 27-20. Yeah, they're not getting 20. 27-13. 27-13.
The last game against the Saints is the first time that the Raiders have scored 20 points or more since November 3rd when they played against the Bengals and lost 41-24. Since then, their offensive output has been 19 points, 19 points, 17 points, 13 points, 9 points, 19 points, and then 25 points.
Yeah. Again, going up against the number one scoring defense in the entire NFL. So I don't think they're going to get 20. What did I say? 27-13? Is that what I said? 27-13 Chargers, if it matters. If it doesn't matter, let's see. If it doesn't matter, does Christian Fulton play? I think he probably does. I think Bud Dupree probably does. And JK, Gus Edwards probably isn't playing. They probably still get. Yeah, I'm sticking with bold prediction regardless. I think all three go for it because even though they don't want to be playing, I think they'd like to see J.K. Dobbins get that 58 yards. 58 yards, he can get that in a quarter and then rest up. So break off one good one. See ya.
And I apologize. I didn't actually give my bold prediction in terms of if it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're here now.
Much in that circumstance, as you were saying, if it's Taylor Heineke at the helm, then you're still going to go heavy in the run game for sure. And whether it's JK doing it or whether it's Kamani Vidal doing it, I think that, yes, I think they're going to find a way to eat. I think if we're talking starters, who would you, okay, well, tell me this, because with Josh Palmer being seemingly out for this game, would you be resting?
Gus Edwards and Josh Palmer now officially out.
Okay.
Denzel Perriman is officially doubtful.
Okay, so we can chalk that up as well. There we go.
Questionable.
Live injury updates.
Questionable is Alohi Gilman.
Okay. So if we know that Gus Edwards and Joshua Palmer are out in a game that doesn't matter, are you still playing Ladd?
No.
Okay. So then to me, your receiving options with Tyler Heineke at the helm would probably be the ones that I would look at. I mean, it's still been a minute since we've seen
the Shark game.
I mean, catching another pass, it's been a minute since we've seen another pass being caught by DJ Chark. To me, it would be heavy Quentin Johnston and Stone Smart, in my opinion, in terms of how the offense would go. Maybe you sprinkle a little bit of Darius Davis in there, but it would probably become a much more shorter field for Taylor Heineke. If you're getting those positive yards on first downs, those are the two weapons that I'm looking for third down conversions. I still think that there would be a possibility that the Chargers could win this, even in a game that doesn't matter, and even with certain starters being out.
I think the Chargers could win this game, even if it does matter and the Chargers aren't playing. There's a very good possibility this Chargers team can win. You saw what happened last year. This Chargers team was decimated by injuries at the end of that season. You saw Easton Stick go toe-to-toe with the Bills.
I mean, toe-to-toe is not really the best word for it. I mean, he played against the Bills.
No, but that team collectively didn't lose by much. Remember how much we were all freaking out when we were all hoping for the number one or a low draft pick, and then all of a sudden, like, wait, no. Like, any given Sunday. And I'll take a well-coached B roster over a poorly coached A roster, quote-unquote A roster, all day. I think they win regardless. I think the Chargers win either way. I'll tell you. Do they win if it doesn't matter?
It's funny because there's a part of me that doesn't want them to win if it doesn't matter.
I know. I agree.
Just to see the Raiders fall that much more for the number one overall pick. But
like I said, my feet are up chilling because either way, that's a win-win for me. Either the Raiders jack up their draft selection or the Chargers sweep them.
Here's what I will say, Dan. And this is why I think that regardless of the fact of whether it's starters or non-starters, that I think that the Chargers are going to find themselves in a position to win the game. You've heard the mentality of Jim Harbaugh the past 3 weeks. When it came to the Denver Broncos game, he was emphatic of the importance of that in terms of what that game meant for them in terms of getting one step closer to the playoffs. You heard it in that post-game speech right afterwards where he said 10 wins is better than 9. And the 10th win was locking up a playoff spot. And they were prepared for that going into New England. As soon as the New England game is done, he said, it's all about seeding. I think regardless of the fact, obviously the Chargers are going to be watching this game, much like all of us, in terms of what happens between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think in general, the message that has been sent throughout the season in terms of preparation, I think regardless if this game means something or not, everybody's going to be prepared for this game. Everybody's going to be prepared.
Preparation H, baby. Preparation Harbaugh.
Wow.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, make sure you say it like that from now on, rather than just saying the initial.
Let's just call it that.
We are not doing any pseudo sponsorship of any preparation H on this show. Thank you very much. Nobody needs to hear that.
On that note, Jake, anything else you want to tell our great friends before you get out of here?
No, it's been a spectacular season. Everybody will obviously be watching the game on Saturday to see the implications of what follows for the Chargers game on Sunday.
Let's go Bengals.
But one way or another, we do know that the Chargers are officially playoff bound. Time will tell as far as where their seeding will land.
It's about to get a whole lot more ratcheted up, and I can't wait for it. Jake, it's been fun. Happy New Year to you and to everyone out there. If you don't already, I don't know where you've been, follow Jake on X at Jake T. Hefner, myself at Dan W. Sports. Do us a favor, hit that like, subscribe, helps out a ton. Leave a review, leave a comment, question, criticism. We'll take it all. But until next time, we will talk to you next time on the next Chargers Unleashed. Happy 2025.